Hello and welcome to the Business Spotlight interview series. I'm your host, Barrett McDonald. I'm joined today by Beau-Brandon Cleeton, founder of Lettuce Agency and Canadian Lumber. Beau, thank you so much for joining us today. Would you like to kick things off a little bit about who you are and what got you started on your entrepreneurial journey?
Sure. As you said, my name is Beau. I guess I've wow, you kind of caught me off guard there. Now I'm all tongue-tied. What
It's all
started me
right.
on an entrepreneurial journey, I guess, would really be my father. He
Okay.
was always very much a self-starter, was an entrepreneur himself, and so it never seemed like an impossible step for me because of that. But I get the what got me started on and this direction was more or less seizing an opportunity is really what it is. I used to be in marketing. I had my own branding agency in marketing, and I knew I needed to change. I was burning out from that lifestyle, that work lifestyle, and took some time off. And in that time, I just thought of a bunch of ideas for products, for brands, for businesses. And some of them I really liked, and some of them I've kept on to and put in my back pocket, and some of them I didn't like at all. And then I thought of Canadian lumber, realized that there wasn't a Canadian brand of rolling papers. And at that point in time, we were less than a year away from legalization.
Okay.
And, and it was a matter of opportunity. I thought of the idea, and I did what probably most people would do, be like, that's a good idea. Someone should do that.
And then you're like,
Kind of
maybe that
walked away
someone should
from
be
it.
me. Yeah.
Right. That's someone really should do that. Someone should come up with a Canadian brand, and walked away from it. And I did one of those where I kind of took two steps away and looked back on myself. And it was like, I should do that. I should do that right now. And so that's really how this stage of my life got started.
That's awesome.
Was recognizing an opportunity,
Well,
right?
that's fun. So then you recognize an opportunity, and then did you start surrounding yourself with some good people?
Yes, absolutely. Because I you 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 can't launch a product, a business, a service. You can't be an entrepreneur on your own. Doing it in a vacuum, you don't get very far. Um, I learned that the hard way in my past experience. I've also seen it done that way and seen things failed and realized it. Do you know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
this time around, what I did was this is basically I did at the beginning, very beginning there. Once I had the idea, I kind of put myself into my studio and locked the door for a week or two to really just flush out what I was thinking. Is this feasible? What's the market size like? How many brands are in the space? How do people produce their products as it is? How's rolling papers made? Are there rules and regulations around this product? That kind of thing,
Okay.
right? Because it's just an idea, right? Like anything else, you have to kind of get a crash course in the industry, the products, and everything else. If you're not already involved in it.
Yeah.
Uh, and so this is where my background with my previous company, the branding and product marketing firm that I had, came came very helpful for me because I was used to doing this kind of research for clients. I was also at the same time I I had brokers, product sourcing brokers around the globe that I'd worked with on fine tuning my clients' products. So for me to sit down and send a few emails, have a few phone calls, with people to basically learn where and how things are made was relatively easy for me within a 6 degrees of separation.
Okay.
Right. And then with my personal skill set in branding, I turned around in a very short period of time and basically put myself through my own process of a brand DNA workshop, thought of 4 different names, developed the branding systems for them. And it was at that point in time I stepped out of the studio. And I brought it to a few mentors of mine that I had during Napkin Creative, my branding firm, that I had during that phase. And I reached out to them, had a few meetings, got some feedback. And to be honest with you, one of them turned around and was like, I want to do this with you.
Nice.
And so he and I went out and got a fair chunk of change from investors and set up a board and set up a company and open a bank account. And that was February. I was knocking on his door. And by April 2nd, 3rd week of April, I had my first round of production samples.
Nice.
That's how fast I moved. And I had to do so because legalization was right around the corner. We knew legalization was coming that fall.
Right.
And so I knew then that it was a race to be the first in market, to be the first Canadian brand in market. Because you're as good of an idea as you have, you're not the only person who have thought of it. 9
Absolutely.
times out of 10. Right?
It's just whoever gets to the sales post first.
Right. Whoever gets there first. And to be honest with you, usually whoever gets there first, second, and third, those are the winners.
Right. Yeah.
Let's be honest. Right?
Because
there's always room for more than one.
Right.
So it was a race, and basically it was me sitting down from the market research that I had initially done when I first had the idea, and constantly every couple of months fine-tuning that with more and more information being unfolded. Do you know what I mean? We realized very early on that basically the cannabis industry would be structured very similar to that of grocery, and with regards to its delivery, sale, and that kind of thing. Taxing wise would be very similar to alcohol and tobacco. Regulation wise would be very similar to tobacco. So we kind of knew from existing systems how this would look. And so for me, it was a race to turn around and develop the products, get into a handful of retailers, use those retailers as case studies to present to distros and go national before legalization. And so that's a fast run.
Absolutely.
You know, that's 9 months from having the idea to legalization. And you know, when you have a timeline like that, you have to be very strategic and, you know, look at your personal Rolodex, look at your family's Rolodex, your friends' Rolodex of people, and see how you can make this happen within that 6 degrees of separation. Right? Like, and this is the thing, we're really fortunate here in Nova Scotia. It's not 6 degrees, let's be honest, it's 3.
Right.
Right? You can pretty much sit down with anyone you want to in this province within 3, maybe 4 phone calls. Right?
Absolutely.
And so I took that to heart and got a bunch of stores on board. You know, like I'm friends with Scott Doucette, who used to have all the Mary Janes in the region. That was a head shop in the region. And so I launched with him, and I did very specific product launches. Some of them were just put it on the shelf, don't do anything else. Some of them were, let's do a full display and a social media push. And I use those different types of launches as case studies to show distros.
Right.
And showing sales numbers after those different types of launches also helped me. Right. And sure enough, there we were by September with a couple of distros across the country, albeit smaller ones. And here I am at the end of September loading into BOB headquarters, which became Humble and Fume. They're one of the two largest or three largest distros national.
Yeah.
Right. And so that was it. I managed to check my box at that point. I'm like, here we go. We're launching. Legalization is happening. And like within the couple of weeks of legalization, Humble and Fume is going to be onboarding us. Right. So it was because of that trajectory and that sales plan and that strategy of launching the brand, how we launched it social media wise, through retailer, through the Mary Jane stores, and then through other retailers in the regions. Because again, it's 3 degrees of separation. How many people do I know that know someone that owns or manages a head shop in this area?
Right.
Right.
Probably quite a few.
Probably a few. Exactly. So it was that was the game, that was the race, that was the strategy, and it was executed pretty well. Not perfectly, but pretty close. You know, nothing's going to execute perfectly.
No.
But it was pretty good.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Well, that's awesome. So when you are, I mean, moving so fast, what qualities were you looking for in your staff, and how did you foster that positive work environment?
Great question. I'd say this one was a difficult thing to do. And the only reason why is because in the past for me, I'd been where the buck had stopped. It was either just me or me with 1 or 2 partners. This time around, it's me with a board. So for me, that was a learning curve. So that added a layer of complexity when it came to hiring, because my hiring style is not normal. One of my favorite things to do is ask for a playlist. I used to ask for a mixtape. That dates me. But yeah, now I ask for a playlist, a curated playlist, right? That best describes you.
Nice.
And the reason why I would do things like that is as part of the resume process is because what I'm looking for is always just a little bit of insight as to the thought pattern and the logic processing of any new hire. Because I'm well aware I'm very ADHD. I move at a very fast pace. And because of that, sometimes not all my balls stay in the air. I need to make sure that my team members around me are very skilled in their areas, and their logic processing is a little bit wider than normal, so that they can point out when I'm about to drop balls.
Nice.
And so I think that this time around, there was a bit of a learning curve for me with it. So hiring the team had a bit of a fluctuation. I do think that the team we've ended up with is absolutely phenomenal. Phenomenal. Right?
That's
From
good.
but like anything else, there's going to be, some wins, some losses, and then you're going to learn from those and finally end up where you need to be.
Absolutely. That's fun. So
Right?
what would you say are some of the common misconceptions about running a business that you've come across, and what do you do to combat them?
It's a great question. I think the first one is about, I'm going to approach that 2 ways, actually.
Absolutely.
The misconceptions that people have going into business for themselves. That perspective. I find that a lot of people starting a business for themselves off the bat, and I did this myself, my first couple of businesses, they try to position themselves that they are the expert, that they are the epicenter of knowledge for what's happening with this business. And that can't be. You need to hire. I know it sounds cliche, but you need to hire people smarter than you.
Right.
I'm terrible. I'm a terrible accountant. I went to art school. So I've learned I need a CFO, right? Like, why am I dealing with the books? Why am I dealing with, like, I know and understand how to read a P&L sheet, a profit and loss sheet. That's what I need someone to do it though for me.
Right.
And so I find that, and that's the first one thing with people coming into business for themselves. And the second thing, there's a big difference between being self-employed and being an entrepreneur. And I heard, and I used to always mix them up. And now I'm really good at recognizing when I'm a small business owner and when I'm an entrepreneur. Right now with Canadian Lumber, I'm more in an entrepreneur role. I don't deal with the day-to-day. I'm on the board. I have stepped away from the day-to-day actions, but it doesn't mean that I'm not involved with what's happening monthly, let alone yearly.
Yeah.
Whereas with Lettuce Agency, I am day-to-day. I'm hour to hour. And I heard this best summarized once, because it is, if you could walk away from your business for 90 days and it's self-sufficient and it moves and everything happens and people get paid and widgets or services are sold and money is coming in and out, you're an entrepreneur. If you have to be there within that 3 months to put out fires, make sure people get paid, bills get paid, or whatever else, you're still a small business owner. Fair. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just acknowledging where your role is in order so that you can allocate that time and mindset. And I have that separation between Canadian Lumber and Lettuce Agency right now. Right. And so that, I think those are two factors from the point of view of people going into business for themselves that they kind of get misaligned on. And then I think the misconceptions that people have about, people that go into business for themselves, people on the outside of it all. I think the biggest one is the time that people have. They think I have all the time in the world. They're like, oh, Beau, you must, go for a long walk with your dog in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
No, I don't have that time.
That's funny. It's right? So true though. The perception is there. Yeah.
Yeah, that misconception is there. It's like I was saying this even to a friend of mine the other day, and he was like, he's a sales rep for a company, a senior sales rep. He deals, a certain level of client throughout Canada for them. And he and I were talking, and he was like, he was teasing me because I slept in that morning. And I was like, dude, I got up though at 3 a.m. to talk to a manufacturer in India. And then after that, I was talking to one in China. And then after that, I was talking to one over in the Philippines. Like, I was up for 3 hours in the middle of the night doing Google calls, going over product production on some new things that I'm developing.
Right.
Yeah, I went back to bed.
Yeah, exactly. It's the misconception is that we can turn it off at 5 o'clock, but even though we're not physically in our businesses, we're thinking about them 24/7. That burden is always there.
Always there. And I think, but that's that skill set though, actually, I'm just going to touch on that. I love that. That skill set though of someone that never turns it off. Those are the people that make the best small business owners, entrepreneurs, the inventors and everything else, because those are the people that are looking at the world around them. And for lack of a better way to put it, problem solving constantly. Oh, look at that. If I just did this, it would make that thing this much better.
Right.
Or, for you could be out at another restaurant or an event and see the way something's organized there and be like, oh, I'm going to do that with my wait staff.
Absolutely.
Right. Or see a way that tables are organized and it suddenly dawned in your head, be like, I could fit in 2 more tables. That would give me 4 more bums in seats. I'm going to rearrange the floor plan later.
Constantly making notes in the phone.
Right. And it's that kind of processing, it's that kind of a brain that makes the best small business owner and entrepreneurs and inventors. Like, I love that. It's
Absolutely.
these people that keep our society moving.
100%. So in this vein, how do you go about balancing the demands of running multiple businesses and having a personal life?
I used to be terrible at this. I've definitely gotten better at it in the last couple of years. I do think that starting Canadian Lumber helped that in comparison to my previous companies. And I think it was the mentors that I had, the people, the investors that I had, and the team that we ended up with at Canadian Lumber. I think it was all of those personalities and backgrounds that really helped me grow in a way that I can output to my whim.
Nice.
But with that said, I'm very structured. So I like to say right now, like I realized when I had the idea to start lettuce, I'll back up here. So when I had the idea to start lettuce, I knew that I couldn't do it on my own. So I brought on board a partner, and she's someone that I've worked with in the past. And the reason why I thought of her right away was because on every project that we did together, she was not just a great project manager, but also at the same time, she had that skill set that I touched on earlier, where she had the foresight to actually see when I was going to drop balls.
Yeah.
And so this time around, when I called her up and I was like, "Hey, I have an idea. I used the analogy of trains with her, actually. I said, with my ADHD, I want to see how many trains in different directions I can set forth." She was like, "What?" And I'm like, "I have an idea for a company that'll allow me to basically build a house of brands, and each brand underneath it is either new products or a group of products that I think would be really good in the cannabis space. And right now I have 6 different brands that I want to do." She was like, "Jesus fucking Christ." Sorry, language.
We'll bleep it.
She kind of went white. And she paused and she was like, "Okay, lay them out for me one by one." And so I did. I went over each idea, and she was like, "Okay, which one do you see as the lowest hanging fruit, as in which one do you see as the easiest one to execute here and now? And then which one do you see having the most financial success within its first 8 months?" Great questions. That was a really insightful way for me to be looking at all of these ideas that I had in my head. It also helped me prioritize it. So I turned around and was able to create Exotic Organics, which is an all-natural blunt cone, because of the demand in the cannabis industry right now. Something that, the convenience is king. People are buying more pre-rolls than they are buying loose flower. So coming up with an all-natural blunt, because in the pre-roll category, the 1 gram joint is the highest selling SKU. So let me develop a product for the one market segment that's growing exponentially. Right. That's the lowest hanging fruit then. So Exotic Organics is all leaf blunts. There's leaf ones, there's petal ones, and then there's fruit ones. The fruit ones are basically a fruit roll-up. It's fruit mashed with water, spread out, turned into a paper, rolled into a cone. It's kind of cool.
Absolutely.
And then, so Lettuce Agency being able to start Exotic Organics as its first brand offer, its first product offer. And at the same time, then I can start slowly working on another one. I thought of Proper Pack. It's basically packaged tubes specific for blunts that help keep them fresher.
Okay.
They have humidity control built into the tube.
That's awesome.
And so those are weeks away from being market ready.
Okay.
Right. And exotic organics, I'm already working. I've been in the market space now, selling them now for the last couple of months. Right. And so this was great. This allowed me to not only look at it big picture wise, and then decide which brands were the smart ones to execute on because of, revenue wise, or the shortest timeline, sorry, from zero to having product ready.
Right.
Right. And finding the sweet spot between those two. And then
Absolutely.
allowing me to build the timeline for everything else. And so basically what I do to organize myself with all of these brands, because I still, sit on the board with Canadian Lumber too, is I'm just dedicating afternoons or mornings. So, Monday morning, I know I basically do admin for everything, but Monday afternoon is emailing for exotic organics or product production for exotic organics, right? Tuesday morning, and it's very early for this one, simply because Proper Pack, I'm dealing with manufacturing in the Philippines and China right now. So that one will likely start at 3 a.m. on Tuesday morning, right? And then I'll break for what would be most people's normal morning schedule.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
That'll be my gym time on Tuesday, or my running time on Tuesday.
Nice.
Right. And then, going in the afternoon, I don't know what next week is right now. I haven't looked at my schedule for it, but maybe it's Canadian Lumber, maybe it's one of my new products that I'm working on that I'm not at the stage of talking about just yet, or maybe it's back to exotic organics. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely. So you're purposeful with what you do.
Right. And so I just kind of break it up this way.
Absolutely. Yeah. Time blocking is a good strategy to have. And as long as you're working the time for personal stuff, it's a win.
It's a win.
Absolutely. So
But
what
yeah.
would you, thinking of all of this, what do you attribute your growth to?
My personal growth?
No, the business growth, the growth of your businesses. Personal growth, we need a couch and some
I was
slow
gonna say,
jazz
I'm
or
like,
something.
that's a deep question.
Yeah.
Canadian Lumber was very strategic. And I touched on that. It was sitting down and planning out how the industry would grow, how the consumers would be introduced to products according to the legalization timelines, that kind of thing. And basically I took that process and applied it to lettuce. But with lettuce, it's a slightly different because each product's a little bit different. So some of them, like Proper Pack, that's a B2B product. That's not in retail. Whereas exotic organics, it's both. I'm starting in B2B, selling just to licensed producers, to the growers of cannabis right now, but it will be a retail consumer product, hopefully by late fall of this year.
Yeah.
But Proper Pack will likely always remain a B2B product. If it does go into consumer space, it's probably only going to be 20% of that brand's revenue.
Okay.
At most. So knowing this and understanding this with each brand and product and the product offerings underneath each brand is what I use to develop those strategies. So and just because I develop a sales strategy and a brand release strategy and I try to live by it like a Bible doesn't mean it's written in stone.
Right.
COVID proved that, man. We have to adjust. You have to change. Things happen in the market space, especially in cannabis. Right now, you see a lot of businesses going into CCAA and disappearing, or being bought out. You see new ones coming in also every day. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Regulations are changing. It's a difficult space, right? Even in accessories, it's a difficult space. right? Like rolling papers are the only accessory that's age gated. You have to be 19 or 18 to buy rolling papers.
Okay.
But you could be any age to buy a bomb.
Crazy.
Because rolling papers fell underneath the Tobacco Act.
Okay.
Original. And so there's some regulations for rolling papers and accessory under tobacco, and then there's some underneath the cannabis. Right? Whereas with packaging, it's just with Health Canada for cannabis. So with every product has its red tape.
Right.
And with that, you have to adjust your Bible, your playbook. Because those regulations change.
Absolutely. Well, that's fantastic. Well,
right.
Beau, I think the one last question I have for everyone at home is for someone who might be watching this and thinking about jumping into the world of entrepreneurship and small business ownership and everything in between, what's one piece of advice you have for them?
In today's consumer world or B2B world, I don't care if you're selling to consumer or industry to industry kind of thing. Brand is king. It used to all be around a sales strategy or a marketing strategy. Now it's all around a brand strategy.
Okay.
And from my experience in the last number of years, I have found that a brand strategy or a brand DNA document is more important than the business plan. I have found that having a proper brand strategy with a proper sales strategy is just a way stronger foundation than doing a traditional business plan.
Okay.
And I don't, if you go through any government process to get small business funding or anything like that, they focus on the business plan. And I think that's a major disservice because they're almost completely ignoring or barely touching on brand.
Right.
And brand is king right now.
That makes sense. So spend
Right.
your effort developing your brand.
Develop your brand and your brand story because that's what matters. And you see that you see that in any industry. Liquid Death, canned water. They developed their product to look like beer, which set huge amount of confusion. And you would think that shouldn't work. And a business plan, if you wrote that out in a business plan, that wouldn't work. I guarantee you that's not what they did. They wrote a brand plan and a brand strategy first.
Yeah.
And it's taken over. Because of that, it's clear. And how they behave, how the brand talks about itself, how it presents itself, everything. From merchandising through to social media.
Absolutely. That makes
Right.
total sense.
Makes total sense. We live in a visual world. Whether you're the age bracket that's mostly on Facebook or mostly on TikTok. For social media through to walking into any physical space, whether it's a restaurant or a convenience store. Right. Understanding that we live in this visual world, brand is king. Right? And the brand isn't just your logo. Brand is the story, the vernacular of when that brand speaks. If you think of your brand as a person, how are they talking? What is their vernacular? What is the language they use? That defines their personality. That helps give you the framework to tell the brand story.
Absolutely.
That is almost more important than the logo. Because
Absolutely.
that's your communication in the world.
Well, I think that that's one good note to leave this Spotlight Series interview on. So, Beau, I thank you so much for joining me today and giving up your time. It's been a pleasure chatting with you. And everyone watching at home, I look forward to seeing you in our next episode.
Awesome. Have a great day.
Thanks.